You're an interesting man, Scott Lang. You're an Avenger. You have a daughter. But you've lost a lot of time, like me. We can help each other with that.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mike Robinson. I'm a professor of communication studies at the University of Lynchburg, and I love superheroes. Today, I want to chat with you a little bit about that love and the way that many fans' excitement about Marvel has blossomed into this incredible colossus we know as the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Marvel started way back in 1939, a little company called Timely, and has been pushing along ever since. But the Marvel that we're really more interested in for today's conversation is the Marvel that popped up in the early 60s, what comic book fans and what comic book academics call the Silver Age of comics. At that time, Marvel introduced some very different sorts of characters. The first was the Fantastic Four, a superhero team that was just different from anything anybody had ever seen before. Interpersonal dynamics, bickering, superheroes like the Thing who didn't want their powers, all kinds of really strong melodrama built into really cracking, great, amazing sci-fi adventures. Shortly thereafter, Marvel gave us its best known character, right? Its corporate symbol, the Amazing Spider-Man. So Spider-Man makes a terrible mistake. He should have helped a guard. He didn't. The burglar that he should have stopped kills his beloved Uncle Ben, and that sets this terrible guilt arc and this perpetual spinning and churning of melodramatic need for redemption. It also makes Peter Parker a very compelling character. Somebody that we're interested in, something that we care about, somebody who has a kind of every person quality that we can connect to. And that became the magic formula for all of Marvel. And Marvel characters that existed before this began to get more that way, and all of the characters that followed began to have that feel. And slowly but surely, Marvel built up this incredible thing that we call the Marvel Universe. That's the term for the comic book universe and all its interlayered, interconnected, interwoven things. The great thing about that time period is that there was this very genius level marketing and this very brilliant level branding that was going on at the time. And Marvel sold itself as a place for young people to be excited about, right? And not just young kids who were reading comics, but older readers, college age readers were particularly excited about Marvel. They really tried to draw those crowds in and to give them stories that they thought they were excited about. They also were really, really clever about making sure that you knew that the character you were following in a story was part of a larger narrative universe, okay? So when Spider-Man gets his own comic, as you can see on the front cover, he's immediately meeting the Fantastic Four. It's smart marketing, right? Oh, you like the Fantastic Four? You'll like this Spider-Man. You might be able to pay for another comic. But it also shows us this interwoven, right, connection between all of these things. And soon it spins out larger and larger and larger, okay? By its 25th anniversary, Marvel is gigantic. Now there are tons of characters. I've never heard the number defined precisely, but the estimate is that Marvel has somewhere between 5,000 to 10,000 characters trademarked or copywritten, and they have a lot of stories with those characters in them, okay? It's really, really challenging to follow all of it, but that also is what makes it exciting, okay? And people have built up an interest. All across my life, Spider-Man was big, Spider-Man was popular. Chances are you knew Spider-Man too. But what really amazes me about the Marvel Universe and the Marvel Cinematic Universe is that there are other characters that are breaking big. And one of the ones that I find most interesting is Ant-Man. I know, Ant-Man, little guy, talks to ants. When I was younger, even comic book fans were a little bit suspicious of Ant-Man. He didn't have a big following. He wasn't a huge character, right? Dr. Hank Pym appeared around the time Spider-Man did, and he did all right. I'm not making fun of him. He just never had that kind of Spider-Man level success or that kind of Captain America level success. And so as a result, Ant-Man became a bit of a joke. Back in the 70s, Garrett Morris on Saturday Night Live was dressed up as Ant-Man, and they laughed at him right in a sketch.
Hey, Hulk! Hey. Check this guy out.
Ooh.
Got the strength of a human.
Ant-Man, huh? Where are your ants?
But what really amazes me about the contemporary Marvel Cinematic Universe is not just that the thing exists. I mean, that's a dream come true for me. I waited all my life to have movies that were this popular and this exciting and this big. But it's that you know who Ant-Man is. You live in a world where you actually know who Ant-Man is. Now, and you know Scott Lang, but you also know Hank Pym. And not only do you know these characters, you can go out and you can buy nostalgic memorabilia for these characters. You can buy licensed tie-ins. You can get the t-shirts. You can get the backpacks. You can, if you want to spend a little bit of money, get the Ant-Man helmet. And the idea that we live in a world where there's not just been one successful Ant-Man movie, there's now 3, is incredible. And it really shows the power and the reach of what happens. Now there's a negative way to see all this. You know, we can look and we can say, well, Disney has acquired Marvel and it's gone down and it's pulled and it's mined and it's torn out these characters and just used them however it saw fit. And it is true that there's a lot of controversy about how much the original creators of these characters should have been paid back when they were comic book characters, let alone what they should be getting from Disney now. But it's also a lot of evidence of the love of the characters, okay? So the Scott Lang that you meet, if you've never read comic books before, the Scott Lang that you meet as Ant-Man is pretty much the Scott Lang that I've always known. Character is key. Character is crucial. Character is essential. Also, to Marvel's credit, they've developed a more diverse world in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We don't just live in a world with Ant-Man. We live in a world with the Black Panther, a hugely successful film, and a fairly good sequel that, tragically, when we lost Chadwick Boseman, had to reconfigure itself to figure out how to keep going, and still generated a lot of excitement. We have strong female characters like Captain Marvel, right? Carol Danvers, who has been around as a character since the 70s in the comics. We get to see her strength and her power and her agency as she battles forward as well. But one of the things we don't talk a lot about with Marvel, and one of the things that I find really, really interesting, is that it's not a place full of just rich heroes and rich characters and exciting protagonists. It's also a world full of really fascinating villains. And so the real key to Marvel, to me, is bringing together really interesting protagonists and sending them against really interesting antagonists. The current villain that I think is going to be very, very interesting is Kang. And Kang is getting a slow rollout. We've seen Kang show up in the Loki series. Now we're seeing Kang show up fighting Ant-Man of all characters. What will happen with Kang? Well, the Kang that I know from the comics is a very rich and fascinating villain who has a lot of standard evil bad guy motivations. You know, he's Kang the Conqueror. He wants to conquer. He wants to take over the world. He keeps picking fights with the Avengers simply because he wants to prove himself, or simply because he's really frustrated with them. But there's also other layers to this character. In the comics, there's an interesting romance for Kang, a sort of unrequited love that I suspect is going to play out in the movies and the TV series. But there's also a really fascinating problem to Kang, and that is that Kang is a villain who has already won. We're going to meet a lot of Kangs, okay? Plenty of Kangs. Some of the Kangs we've seen are trying to win. Some of the Kangs we've seen are already victorious. Some of the Kangs we've seen are so victorious that they're bored with victory. This makes Kang a very different kind of villain. Kang is kind of like you when you play a video game, right? Kang has gone back and mastered the level. Kang has beaten the Avengers so many times through the miracle of time travel that he's almost bored with the need to do so. And this makes, again, a very compelling character, right? It's not just a villain walking around saying, I want to do this, I want to take this, I want to steal those. It's a character who honestly believes they're doing the right thing, even though they've created all of the problems that they exist in. Kang is sort of the beginning and end of himself. It's really complicated and really messy, and that's what makes it a lot of fun. But ultimately, I think it's a taste of that Marvel sense of villainy. Characters like Loki, who become compelling and interesting. Characters like Thanos, who are interesting but are clearly wrong. We could name dozens of others. Magneto is another great character who is a villain, but we're not sure why.
Peace was never an option.
Now that's a lot of fan love and that's a lot of fan excitement. What does it all mean academically? Well, what it means is that we really care about these characters. We really connect to them. Through a process called parasocial interaction, we form kind of bonds with these characters like they're real people. Now, relax, we all know that you don't think these characters are real, but we care about what happens to them, and we care about the adventures they go through and the triumphs and the tragedies. Just in the same way that we care about what happens to real celebrities or our favorite sports stars or our favorite musicians, okay? We connect up to these things and we form these tight bonds. And that's the genius of Marvel. The genius of Marvel is that it keeps making characters that are really compelling, really interesting, really exciting, and then getting you and me to like them, okay? To really be interested in what happens to them. That's the power, and that kind of success has helped the comic book company for decades, and no doubt will inspire the movie franchise, which is an unbeatable colossus so far, to continue to succeed. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is this amazing narrative device, but it's also this incredible business engine. So it finds a way to generate fan excitement and also collect fan dollars. And it does this by continuously hyping the interconnectivity of itself, but also continuously hyping what comes next in the future, right? So as we meet Kang, we know that this is not the last time we see him. We know that Kang will be back. He's going to show up in the Loki series. We know that there's an upcoming film with Kang, right? They set this out for us. They don't just tell us what Marvel movies have been made. They've already laid their schedules out for us. We know, we're only at the beginning of Phase 5, and we already know pretty much the order of the movies in that and order of the movies in Phase 6. And we know that eventually we're looking towards Avengers Kang Dynasty. We know that they are going to build Kang into the sort of character that an entire group of super beings need to deal with. And that is brilliant hyping. Just like they did in the comics decades ago, just like they do in the comics now, that is really creating not just the need to see the movie you're watching, but to come back and to see more. Kang will return. That's what the end credits tell us at the end of Quantum Mania. Not Ant-Man will return, Kang will return. We know this guy is coming back, and that is what really fuels that deep fan need to spend that deep fan money to keep that whole machine going. It's been fun hanging out with you. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation. Reach out to me if you have any questions, and keep making yours Marvel.